resource critical to our survival. It's the basis of all life on Earth. We are surrounded by it, but is our water safe to drink? Because of the abundant water supplies in the Great Lakes region, we have taken our water for granted. We have assumed our water was pure and safe, and that we could use it in unrestricted quantities forever. For many people, safe drinking water can no longer be taken for granted.
Hello, I'm Gene Perrin, a physician and teacher. I've been an environmentalist all of my adult life, and I'll be your host as we examine the problem of groundwater quality in the state of Michigan. Groundwater is the source of drinking water for nearly half of our population. This report will focus on the causes, consequences, and proposed solutions for the contamination of our groundwater. Just how safe is the water from your taps and wells? Nearly 4.5 million persons from 41 of 83 Michigan counties depend upon groundwater supplies for their drinking water. This program will concentrate upon citizens of two communities in their struggle for their health and a safe glass of water. The story will help you understand how citizens are affected by polluted water. Just imagine turning on your tap and not being able to get a glass of water. Some citizens of Battle Creek can no longer trust their wells and require state agencies for a source of drinking water.
I received a notice about my drinking water from the state of Michigan telling me about the contamination in it. It had been sampled, and there was 9 industrial chemicals in it. The letter stated that I should not drink, cook with the water in my private well, that I should find an alternate source of water. And it was up to myself. We started carrying water from friends and neighbors' homes out of the area to use, and eventually we were put on a bottled water program that was run by the state, at times funded by Thomas Solvent, but for the most part funded through the state and the DNR.
The letters that have been sent out by our department to the residents of the city of Battle Creek, as well as to private individuals that had contaminated wells in the area, made every effort to explain to the people the concerns.
I had a son that was 4.5 months old when he died, and that could have been a result of mixing formula. I don't know for sure, but mixing formula with chemicals daily, on a daily basis, can cause, an overdose.
I myself have leukemia, which one of the chemicals in my own water well was benzene, and benzene is a known proven causer of leukemia.
Half my hair fell out, and my skin turned gray, and I had no idea why, and I did not know why until last spring, when I was more informed about the effects of the chemicals. I was just devastated because we were not informed, and they kept everything from us. And then, as I look back on it, I've had some severe problems.
Now the children, they are affected. We have our little girl, she's 9, she has very bad throat problems. They don't know whether it's tonsillitis or just what. The doctors here, they can't really diagnose it. If she stays off the water, the well water, it's not there. But if she gets into the well water, well, then it flares up immediately. The boy, he's older than she is. He's 12. He's really hyper. He's wound up like a spring when he drinks the water. He's unruly. You can't control him. He's unreasonable.
In Battle Creek, we have had various information given to us, either verbally or otherwise, that people have had problems with skin disease, with cancer, with kidney and liver disorders, and with headaches, things of this type. At this point, we have not ourselves discovered any of these.
I have lost a lot of confidence in our officials locally, in the county, in the state, and I feel like I've gotten a shaft, and I guess I'm a little bit more cautious now than I was before because they did not tell me anything. And I've had to learn a lot on my own. And I realized that, they may say one thing, but it's not going to necessarily be the truth. And it may not necessarily be the way it really is.
They say, well, we told the people what we thought they should know. Well, the difference what these officials think you should know and what you should really know is the difference between daylight and dark.
I think in general, our staff working with public water supplies and with the private well owners have had fairly good reception. We are working hard to try and advise people what the potential problems are and to assist them to correct any problem that might be any concern at all to their health.
You give me the money, Mr. Governor, and then get out of my way. I'll go find the man that can show what's wrong with me. I don't need you telling me there's nothing wrong.
Federal funds at Battle Creek and Berlin and Farrell will not pay for a couple of things the state really believes are important. One of those is comprehensive health studies to determine what exactly has happened to the people who live in those areas as a result of drinking contaminated water or being exposed to contamination through other environmental mediums.
The people of Battle Creek live in an urban center and are affected by pollution, a fact of city life. Country living offers no escape from pollution, as the people of Swartz Creek, site of the Berlin-Farrow dump, discovered. They chose not to live in the city. They brought their homes in what they thought was the quiet, clean security of the country. The residents of Battle Creek know their water is contaminated. The residents of Swartz Creek only suspect their water may be contaminated. This sign expressed the frustration of residents after hearing of another postponement in their 10-year effort to get the dump cleaned up. The seepage from the dump into the ground near the site is worse than the Department of Natural Resources and the Environmental Protection Agency first suspected.
Down was purple.
Residents who live near the
And I
toxic
couldn't
dump
imagine
spoke
where they
about their
did
fight to have the
So we
site
talked
cleaned
about
up,
it, and Wayne said,
as well as efforts to have their wells tested for chemical
Well, in
contaminants.
the dump then, it was just Well, Berlin and Farrell Incineration Company obtained a permit from the Department of Natural Resources in 1971 as a liquid waste disposal for non-toxic wastes. He started incinerating in 1972, and exactly 1 year later, the people were up in arms over the terrible pollution that was occurring in the neighborhood, smoke, stench, noise, and so forth. We started by going to the Air Pollution Control Commission and asking for some relief. These efforts continued for approximately a year, and early in 1974, he signed a consent agreement in which he agreed to clean up the incinerator, install scrubbers, etc., so that the pollution would be abated. DNR took him to court and had him a cease and desist order from incinerating. However, they did not take his hauling license away from him, and so when he could no longer burn the material, he dug deep lagoons, lined them with plastic liners, and dumped in 3 million gallons of toxic waste. He also buried barrels on the site and tanks. Finally, because of our agitation, the DNR realized what he was doing, and in 1978 presented him with another cease and desist, not a cease and desist, a consent agreement in which he would clean up the site. However, he didn't do it, so they took him back to court in 1980 and told him he had to do it or face prosecution and fines. At that point, he declared bankruptcy, left the state with the site because he had not paid the taxes on it and with all the pollution as well.
Many firms, faced with the large cost of groundwater cleanup, do go bankrupt, and the available resources to address those problems or recover damages is simply not there. The bankruptcy laws are intended to protect primary creditors. And when you're seeking a money damage claim against an individual or corporation that's gone bankrupt, you have to stand in line with everyone else, and usually you're not first in line.
Well, there are approximately 21 families out here who, in desperation with regard to the cleanup program, decided to file a lawsuit. Well, we are suing for diminution of property value because our property has been appraised at zero value because of where it sits. And we're also, some of us are suing for health effects because we feel we have had them. We are suing for stress, 11 years of, and I can assure you, 11 years of stress. I blame the Department of Natural Resources because they were the ones who licensed the facility, and they're the ones that did not monitor it as they should. So we are also suing them as well as over 100 companies.
If citizens are adversely impacted by an unpermitted discharge, they can and have in fact sued the state. Typically, the state has no liability in those situations.
The government didn't want to be blamed for this. And it's the same as every other deal that we've had with anybody. Nobody wanted to accept the responsibility. See, we keep saying it's the DNR's fault. The DNR is supposed to keep an eye on the site and monitor everything that's going on. Well, somebody goofed along the road someplace because a lot of stuff took place that wasn't supposed to take place.
I think in retrospect, Berlin and Faro could have been addressed a lot quicker than it was. It wasn't until we went through the long process of revoking the air license, the solid waste license, and ultimately the liquid industrial waste haulers license that we actually closed the facility down, and later found out through the cleanup process that many illegal activities never authorized by anyone were going on in the interim period.
The DNR didn't address the barrel site where they buried all the barrels. As a matter of fact, they even denied that they were there. Several times they denied. We told them it was there. The DNR denied it. They said it wasn't possible, that it couldn't be there. All that he had permission to bury was crushed barrels. But we told him that we seen him bring in barrels that were full and they were buried. And we couldn't get any response from anybody. They just told us we didn't know what we were talking about. But now they're into it, and now they know that we told them the truth.
We estimate there are approximately 2,700 total dischargers to the groundwaters in the state, of which 700 to 800 are permitted.
It's a resource limitation problem. The reason that only a portion of the dischargers have permits is largely because there has not been sufficient staff to process permits, to go out and find the illegal dischargers and get them to submit applications. And in fact, some of those discharges we wouldn't want to permit. We would want to terminate the discharges.
I blame the DNR probably more than I blame anybody else for the situation we have out here. But I find that, they're not unique. I'm now dealing with the EPA, and I'm getting the same kinds of non-response, I suppose is the word.
Criminal enforcement of environmental laws is relatively new. The last 3 or 4 years. There have been minor misdemeanors, $50, $100 fine, but more recently we have been seeking higher penalties under the criminal provisions and trying to update some of the criminal provisions of the newer laws because we do in fact think it's a criminal offense when somebody blatantly disregards a statute and endangers life or property. In the past couple of years we have had a number of criminal convictions and fines. No jail terms. That's very difficult to obtain.
It seems that they won't take a case unless they're sure they're going to win it. So, and I feel that, if there is a violation, those people should be gone after. There should be, at least should be made public, even if for some reason the case gets lost.
Since the division was created in 1978, the state has collected with the Assistant Attorney General about $25 million in fines, penalties, and damages to the state. It's a fairly high amount, probably greater than most states. It involves many major settlements with firms such as Hooker, Beaufort, Lakeway, Velsico on many major problems that we've had. In addition, it probably amounts to several $100 million in pollution cleanup efforts by those same companies in addition to the fines and penalties.
And from the Attorney General's office, we have received no response whatsoever. Their argument being that it's, since there is a lawsuit, they are not free to discuss the matter. And, when it pertains to my life, I feel that, and my health, I feel that these are some answers I should get regardless.
Causes of groundwater contamination are many, including some loopholes in existing laws and some inadequacies. But it would only be honest to admit that there are some real problems in the philosophy of state government, the aggressiveness with which it protects groundwater, and the overall framework within which the agencies operate.
I don't think that the DNR has the knowledge. I don't think they have the right personnel to address the problems of toxic wastes.
The experience of the people living in these two communities serves as an example to other Michigan residents who may face similar problems at the 218 known dump sites in the state. We know of at least 24 Michigan cities that have municipal wells contaminated by chemicals. 900 other sites are suspected of having unusual chemical substances in wells.
On our groundwater supplies in Michigan, generally, we have aesthetic-type problems with iron and hardness, but we, again, in general, do not have a high number of supplies with various contamination problems. Michigan is very fortunate.
Most of these substances are found in water in parts per million or parts per billion. In other words, our groundwater contains increasing numbers of contaminants, most occurring in low concentrations. Little is known about the health effects of ingestion of highly dilute concentrations of contaminants over time. These substances are toxic at higher concentrations and should be eliminated from the water supply. Some of the most commonly encountered contaminants in well water are petrochemicals and trichloroethylene, or TCE. No permissible concentration of toxics have been set for drinking water. In higher concentrations, gasoline, for instance, is a depressant. When inhaled, it may produce confusion, staggering, and damage to the pancreas, liver, and kidneys. TCE is a commonly used industrial solvent and degreaser. It is a nervous system depressant and a known carcinogen or producer of cancer in experimental animals.
Well, it really upset me because I learned last spring when I got involved with the chemicals that they were mutagenic. So what is that going to do generations from now because of the chemical exposure that we've had? I mean, it is a crying shame. I mean, it's pretty obvious. They knew about this for a long time.
How did the pollution get there? According to the Department of Natural Resources, the largest source of groundwater contamination, or 25% of the total, comes from the storage and handling of petroleum products. Another 13% comes from unknown sources, which appear to be gasoline contamination. These sources include leaking gas storage tanks, gas stations, refineries, tank fields, transportation spills, and residential storage. Another 22% comes from heavy industry, such as mining operations, metal casting, and chemical manufacturing. 13% of the pollution occurs from surface and subsurface solid or liquid waste leakage. 7% comes from the salt we use to keep our roads clear. 5.5% comes from smaller industries such as metal plating shops and printing shops. Another 4% occurs from the operations involved in drilling for and producing oil and natural gas. 2% comes from agriculture-related activities such as food processing and application of pesticides and herbicides by farmers. Municipal waste treatment accounts for 1.5%. Spills resulting from truck or train accidents account for 1%. Cleaning our clothes at laundromats and dry cleaners adds another %. Fires cause 3.5% of the pollution.
When we combine all those together, it will take several decades to adequately address them. And in fact, we are discovering new problems now faster than we are able to respond to them. In fact, we're currently discovering new problem sites that involve contaminated drinking water wells at an average rate of 3 new sites per month.
Now that we have seen that virtually all activities of an industrial society pollute our water, what is to be done?
What we need are a couple of things. First, money. We have a problem of toxic waste that's going to cost $3 billion to clean up. And the governor has started a program to do that with a $21 million request for fiscal 84 and 85, but that's just a dent, a very small dent in the real problem. And we'll have to look for a funding source.
Our current budget recommendations to the legislature for the state funding program include alternate water supplies or monitoring associated with contaminated water supplies at approximately 65 sites. And those 65 sites address about 400,000 people's drinking water.
Cleanup costs for drinking water supplies across the state, including Battle Creek right now, are picked up by the taxpayer, both through the state's toxic waste program and the federal Superfund program.
We estimated that it would take approximately $2.8 billion to adequately address the sites we're aware of now, plus a certain number that we expect to continue to find over the next 10 years. It would probably take us 30 to 50 years to spend that money.
EPA, though, under the Superfund law, is biased towards short-term, cost-effective solutions. The law is written that way, so they've gone for a solution that will deal with the problem for 1 year or 2 years, but not for the long term.
There's need to find out in advance whether a chemical is going to be harmful, rather than let it into the environment and then discover 4 or 5 years down the line that we made a mistake and we have to go back and attempt to clean it up.
We can enact a liability law that will make industries accountable and pay for cleanup. Secondly, we can develop financing mechanisms like environmental impairment insurance in the long run that will provide a pool of money that could be used for cleanups that would not burden the taxpayer.
It's not just the law, though, that needs some beefing up. Policy generation right from the top in the departments themselves, especially in DNR, is going to have to recognize from the director through the bureau chiefs right down to the division chiefs, the section chief, the regional and field staff people, that public health and environmental protection are the #1 priority, and that they've got to be more responsive to the public and be able to carry out those mandates. The mandates of the law are there.
We still have a need for some new legislation. One good example of it is the problem of underground storage of chemicals. The Battle Creek water supply has been contaminated principally by inadequate storage of underground chemicals. And there is no state law that sets design criteria, testing requirements, removal of tank requirements if they're leaking.
People have known for a long time that there was contamination, that there was a dumping site, terrible mismanagement there, and it took them 10 years to get it cleaned up. That's in Berlin-Farrow. In Battle Creek, we're looking at people with groundwater contamination problems and having had a suspicion of that for a long time. In both cases, severe mismanagement is to blame for the situation. Then coming to the cleanup of that, we have to start looking at what's being done to clean it up. Is it really being dealt with in a permanent way? And the answer is no. Berlin-Farrow, they're taking the waste and moving them elsewhere, to Ohio and possibly to Wayne County. This isn't a permanent solution. It's a political solution.
Repeatedly, we have been told by the waste disposal industry in the past that they will solve the problems. They will build proper landfills. They will build incinerators. They will build treatment plants to properly take care of hazardous and toxic waste. We have yet to see that happen.
Well, I think that we're not going to see the citizens of Battle Creek trust the state government again, and I'm afraid that's going to be the case in many communities until such time as there are sufficient funds to begin addressing the problem. I think that's a very sorry state of affairs. There are very many committed individuals working for both the Department of Public Health and the Department of Natural Resources who want to see these problems solved. But right now, they don't have the resources to do it, and people don't trust them because the problems are not getting solved quickly enough.
Our commission believes that we ought to very carefully investigate the need for a state-owned and perhaps state-operated hazardous waste facility, maybe more than one.
But as long as there's government, there's going to be a need for citizens to keep the heat on government to do what it's supposed to do. That's the way our system works. Citizens should not have to demand basic things like safe water, But sometimes, regrettably, the agencies and the politicians don't do the job, and we're going to need vigilance from the public.
But if there's any real help coming to you, the people in the living rooms of the state of Michigan, are the ones that better get out and get yourself some help. Don't wait on your state agencies. Don't take their word for what is in the water. Don't take their word as to how safe it is to drink.
The groundwater contamination problems we discussed in this report are not isolated incidents and will not soon disappear. This environmental crisis is nationwide. Is your water safe to drink? The answer to this question must come from you and the government. The acceptable level of toxics to be allowed in the water will soon be determined. Since so little is known about the effects of chemicals on human health, many people believe that there is no safe minimal level of contamination. The final question is, how much trichloroethylene and petrochemical are you and your family going to drink?